What's up guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Dean's Beans and we're here to talk about Spider-Man. A few weeks ago I posted a video where I ranked the top 40 Batman villains by how much I would like to see them appear in a sequel to The Batman or somewhere else in the world of The Batman. People got very upset in that video because I kept calling it the Batman verse Robert Pattinson thing instead of the Reeves verse. But you know what, I'm going to call it what I want to call it. Anyway, I thought I would do the same thing with Spider-Man in the MCU for the college trilogy. So I've got the list of the top 40 Spider-Man villains that haven't appeared in the MCU yet, apart from multiversal characters, which I have included. So the only characters I've excluded from the list is Shocker, Vulture, Mysterio, and the Tinkerer, I think. So everyone else is on the list in the top 40. Believe it or not, there's no El Muerto, because he's a nobody Spider-Man villain. Anyway, with that all said and done, we're going to go through the list in alphabetical order and I will rank them by how much I would like them to see appear in the MCU live for you right now. Let's jump into this list. First up, we have Alistair Smythe. Believe it or not, he did appear in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Played by BJ Novak. This is basically just a scientist who builds spider slayer robots to kill Spider-Man and later becomes like a spider hybrid thing. I think this would be a fun villain and one which I don't really see explored in any Spider-Man media, not in the video game, or I don't remember seeing him in animated stuff, although I think he has appeared in Spectacular Spider-Man. Obviously he's in first place for now because he's the only person on the list. The next character we have is the Beetle, who I always remember from the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show because he showed up in that a lot. It's just like a guy in an Iron Man suit with lots of weapons, normally a hired mercenary, sometimes hired by J. Jonah Jameson to take out Spider-Man. This is an interesting concept, but I just don't know how it would fit into one of these movies, so I'm going to put them in second place behind Alistair Smythe. Next up is one of the more jokey Spider-Man villains. It's basically his version of Condiment King, and that is Big Wheel. Big Wheel, I think, was alluded to in the Daredevil shows, or the character that is Big Wheel appeared in it. I don't remember, but I'd love to see Big Wheel. I think it would be so funny. Big Wheel is going in second place. Let's get Big Wheel in the MCU. I'm starting this trend right here. Hashtag Big Wheel MCU. Let's go. Next up we have Black Cat. We all know who Black Cat is. Is she a Spider-Man villain? Sometimes, who knows? It's basically just Catwoman. I think it would be a great character to see, and I think this is one we're very likely to see. I'm going to put her in first place. People have said that you could get Liz Allen from the first Spider-Man movie and get her, or Liz Toombs I suppose, and get her to play Black Cat. I think that'd be really interesting and I would be up for that as well. Next up is Black Tarantula, a Spider-Man villain I actually know very little about, but they kept coming up when I was making this list, so I did include them, and I have heard of them before. So they're a possibly immortal superhuman who's like a crime boss from Europe who comes to New York and fights Spider-Man. You know what, why not? So you know why not, I'll put them in fourth place. Next up is another obscure Spider-Man villain, and that is Boomerang. Not Captain Boomerang, but they may as well be Captain Boomerang. Captain Boomerang holds a special place in my heart, and I love him with everything that I have. So, do I want to see Boomerang? No, because I feel like that's just going to subtract from Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. So I'm going to put him in sixth place. Next up we have Calypso, who is sometimes the girlfriend of Kraven the Hunter and will be appearing in the Kraven the Hunter movie. I know little about her. I know she's like a voodoo witch type thing. And you know what? Why? I've got no reason not to want to see her. So I'm just looking at my ranking right here. I'm gonna put her in at fourth place. I'd like to see a lead antagonist who's female in a Spider-Man movie because we've never got that before. But of course, Big Wheel supremacy. Next up is an iconic Spider-Man villain we've never actually seen go toe-to-toe with Spider-Man, and that is Carnage. I enjoyed Carnage in Venom Let There Be Carnage. I think Woody Harrelson did a good job. I thought the CGI was cool, and I'd love to see Carnage, but we have already seen him recently, so that does make it a bit trickier. As much as I believe in Big Wheel supremacy, I'm going to put Carnage in third place, because I would really like to see him come up against Spider-Man, you know? Next up is another character that which we know is appearing in the Kraven the Hunter movie, and that is Chameleon, Kraven the Hunter's brother. Chameleon would be fun. Chameleon's quite a well-known Spider-Man villain I think people are clamoring to see in a sequel in Spider-Man 4 in the next trilogy or whatever. I don't think he'd work as a primary antagonist, so I don't really know how else you'd fit him in. I'm going to put him in fifth place because, you know, Big Wheel supremacy. Next up is a character we have seen in the MCU technically, and that is Dr. Octopus, played by Alfred Molina. What I'm answering here is, would I like to see an MCU version of this character? And yes, I'd love to see an MCU version of this character. Obviously, I love Alfred Molina, but you know what? I've got no reason not to want a new adaptation of this character. Maybe do a bit younger, maybe a bit, like, grimier. Maybe they could do Superior Spider-Man. I think that would be great. The idea of Superior Spider-Man really appeals to me, so I'm going to put Dr. Octopus in 4th place. Another character we've already seen is Electro. Electro in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 doesn't work in No Way Home. Works to an extent, but is one of the weaker villains in that movie, in my opinion. I'd like to see Electro because I just want to see the silly costume. But we have seen him a few times, and he's not that interesting a character, in my opinion. So I'm going to put him in 8th place. Okay, perhaps the biggest Spider-Man villain of them all, and that is Green Goblin. I would like to see an MCU adaptation of Green Goblin. There's a few directions you can take this. Willem Dafoe is, of course, perfect, and I don't want to change that, but I'd like to see a comic-accurate costume. I'd like to see, like, a full Goblin face. Maybe do the Ultimate Goblin, which is the big hulking one, which Miles Morales faces. I think that would be really interesting. I'm going to put Green Goblin in 4th place. Next up is Hammerhead, who's kind of just a generic Spider-Man crime boss with a big old head. Why not, you know? If they were like Hammerheads in the next Spider-Man movie, if they announced that right now, I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, I would feel nothing. I wouldn't be upset about it. I wouldn't be excited. So, in the very middle of the pack here, let's shove him in 8th place. Next up is Hobgoblin, and I think the question I need to answer here is, do I want Ned Leeds to appear as a villain? And I think that's pretty dumb. I don't think Ned Leeds should come in as Hobgoblin, or maybe he should. I think it could work. I really don't know. Okay. I really don't know if I want Ned to come in as a villain. I think it would be interesting, but it could also be really bad. So I'm just going to put in 7th place, because I believe in big wheel supremacy. Next up is Jack-O-Lantern, another one of those characters where I'm kind of like, hey, if this character appears, that's cool. If they don't appear, I don't bloody care. But it's silly. I love silly things. A big flaming pumpkin firehead. I think that would be a bit of a laugh. I think it'd be a bit of a goof, and it'd be a bit funny. So I'm going to put Jack-O-Lantern in 9th place. Next up, we have the Jackal, who's kind of known for cloning Spider-Man a bunch. The question here to answer is, do I want to see the Clone Saga in the MCU? And my answer to that question, why not? Everyone hates the Clone Saga, but like, Marvel doesn't have to follow what they do in the comics, and they won't follow what they do in the comics. So I think the Clone Saga could be a heck of fun. I think it would, to see Ben Reilly and all of that. I think that'd be really cool. So I'm gonna put Jackal in 4th place. That's gonna be unpopular. Deal with it. Next up is the Juggernaut, a character we've seen twice in live action, both in X-Men movies and Deadpool 2 and X-Men Last Stand.
Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
I think an MCU Juggernaut would be a lot of fun. Why not? It wouldn't work as a central antagonist, just a bit of a, you know, a bit of a side thing in there. I'm going to shove Juggernaut in 8th place because I believe in big wheel supremacy. Speaking of Spider-Man clones, next we have Kane, who's a Spider-Man clone who's sometimes a bit of a villain, sometimes a bit of an ally. You know how these things work. I'm just going to shove him in 4th place above Jackal. Bloody good idea, mate. Next up, we have the bloody kangaroo playing the bloody didgeridoo. Okay, I won't do an Australian accent again because that's not very good, but some of you stupid American people think I'm Australian. I sound very English, thank you very much. Why am I going off on this tangent? Okay, do I want to see the kangaroo? Why not? He started off as a boxer and then learned to jump like a kangaroo, then came to America and robbed every bank in America. Like, he robbed every bank. How is that a thing? That's dumb. It's stupid, but he did it, and I respect that. Respect to kangaroo. Let me look at my leaderboard and see where I would rank this dumb. You know, he's dumb like Jack-O-Lantern, so I'm going to put him in 13th place. Next up, we have Kingpin. Obviously, I'd want Vincent D'Onofrio to play Kingpin because he is Kingpin in the MCU and he's amazing. Just Daredevil is an amazing TV show, and he's like the second best part of that after Charlie Cox. I'm going to put Kingpin in 1st place, no debate. Next up, we have Kraven, who is, of course, getting his own movie with Aaron Taylor-Johnson starring. I'd love to see Kraven in the MCU. Would I want it to be the Aaron Taylor-Johnson one? Probably not, because we know Sony's track record with their dumb Marvel spin-off movie. Shut up, Sony, you stupid idiot. I'm going to put Kraven in second place. A character we've already seen before is Lizard, and I think they've done all you can with this character. I don't think the Lizard is a very interesting character. I don't think there's much depth there. I don't think there's much left to explore, which they haven't already explored. Yeah, I'm gonna put I'm gonna put the Lizard in 22nd place. Next up is Man-Wolf, who we actually saw in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, just the man part. He wasn't a wolf yet. He's J. Jonah Jameson's son, who I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head, and I refuse to Google it. And he goes to the moon, and on the moon, he becomes a werewolf. This is kind of the stupid thing I'm wanting. Forget Jack-O-Lantern. Forget Kangaroo. Remember Big Wheel. But this guy who goes to the moon and becomes a werewolf and is the son of J. Jonah Jameson is everything I want in the world. It's the perfect Spider-Man villain. Like what else do you want from a Spider? He goes to the moon and he comes back. He goes to the moon and becomes a werewolf. We get werewolves in the MCU soon with Werewolf by Night. But I don't think he's going to become a werewolf on the bloody moon. That would be ridiculous. And he's the son of, like, Spider-Man's greatest enemy. He becomes a wolf man. A man-wolf, if you must. This is like the time Captain America turned into a werewolf. Oh, what fun we have. It's not even that funny. I'm going to put... He's a wolf. He's like an astronaut. Imagine if we like sent an astronaut to the moon. And then when they come back, they're a wolf. And you're like, what's going on the moon? Is there like... Is there a werewolf there biting? As if the universe was telling me to stop, my camera actually cut out halfway through my laughing fit. So let me just get everything back into position. Yeah, like that. That's cool. Okay. Man-Wolf. He's a man, and he goes to the moon and becomes a werewolf. You know what? I'm gonna put him in 4th place just because it's so funny. I don't know why it's made me laugh that much. Next up, we have Molten Man, who goes to the moon and becomes a molten... No, he doesn't. We kind of basically saw Molten Man in Spider-Man Far From Home, but it was just an illusion. It wasn't actually any character, so I wasn't counting it. But we saw Spider-Man fight a big fire thing, or like a hologram of a big fire thing. So who wants to see Molten Man again going in 24th place? Okay, baby. Next one's the big one. Let's get ready for this. Morbius. We all love Jared Leto. We all watched Morbius and we were like, hey... Do you know what would make this movie even better? More. Put him with Spider-Man. I want more Morbius. I love Morbius. Morbius is my favourite Marvel character. If I could choose any Marvel character to fight Spider-Man, it would be Morbius. If I could just, please, more Morbius. Yeah, so new rule for this YouTube channel, no more talking about the movie or the superhero that Jared Leto recently played in a Marvel movie. Not the Joker, the one after that. Not the Joker in Zack Snyder's Justice League, the one after that. And just because it really riles me up, and I hate him. He's going in last place. How is this video going so off the rails? Next up is a more recent Marvel villain and very similar to the character that I nearly said the name of, but I refused to, and that is Morlun. He's just like a big immortal guy who likes to punch Spider-Man a lot, and I think that's pretty cool, and it's unlike anything we've seen before. I'm going to put him in, let's go 8th place. Next up, we have Mr. Negative, who I'm sure most people will remember from the Spider-Man PlayStation game, which is just brilliant. And Mr. Negative is an interesting character. I think you could do some really interesting stuff visually with this character, which the Spider-Man movies have kind of been missing out of. Apart from with bloody Mysterio. So I like the idea of Mr. Negative. I'm gonna shove him. I just looked at Man-Wolf again. I'm gonna shove him in 4th place. Just. He went to the moon and become a werewolf. Next up, we have the Prowler. More than I want to see any of these Spider-Man villains, I'd love to see a good version of Miles Morales, and we're definitely going to get that one day or later. And with Miles Morales comes the Prowler, so I'm going to put the Prowler pretty high up. I'm going to put the Prowler in second place. Next up is a Spider-Man villain we have seen in a Spider-Man movie before, in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and that is Rhino. I just lost the ability to speak. Played by Paul Giamatti. I'd love to see a proper Rhino who's just a big guy in a big silly suit running around with his big old horn. I think that would be a lot of fun instead of just little old Paul Giamatti. I'd like to see the Rhino. Let's shove him in 9th place. Next up we have the Rose, who is Wilson Fisk's son, Richard Fisk, and he's just, you know, he's just one of those boring crime people. Yeah, I literally haven't, you know, I want to see Wilson Fisk, and I think it would be fun to see him have a son. So the more I think about that, the more I'm like, hey, maybe that's a thing we could do. I'm going to put him in 20th place. Next up is a villain we have seen before by Thomas Hayden Church, and that is Sandman. I love his Sandman, and I don't know what else the MCU could do with that. Unlike Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus, where I can see they could go Superior Spider-Man or Ultimate Goblin, I don't really see what they could do with Sandman. So I'm not going to rank him particularly high, and you know, I like the character, but why do I want to see him again? I'll put him in 20th place. Next up is a character we have been teased in the MCU, and that is Scorpion. I know a lot of fans want to see Scorpion, and I'm in that boat as well. I think it'll be an interesting villain to see. I don't know if I'd want Scorpion as the main antagonist, but it would be fun, so I'm going to put him in 7th place, just behind Manwolf. Next up is Screwball, a villain I don't like from this Spider-Man video game, and that's all I know them from, so I'm going to rank them quite lowly. I'm going to put them in 29th place. Speaking of villains I'm going to rate lowly, next up we have Shriek. Shriek was in Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and Shriek was fine. I see no reason for her to come up against Spider-Man, despite my want for more female Spider-Man villains. So I don't know why I started speaking like this. I'm gonna put her in 27th place. Next up is Silver Sable. Now here's a female Spider-Man villain I can see them doing something with. I've just straight away, I'm going to put her in 4th place because I think it'd be a fun character to see in live action. I'm going to put him in 22nd place because I believe in big wheel supremacy. Next up is Swarm, which is a swarm of bees which make up a big Nazi. It's true. Spider-Man villains are the stupidest thing in the world. It's a big swarm who's a Nazi. He went to the moon and he came back as a werewolf. Oh, okay. He's a big swarm. You know what? I'm just gonna put. I'm gonna put Swarm in 19th place because I think that would be quite funny. Speaking of boring Spider-Man monster villains, next we have Tombstone. I always get Tombstone and big old Hammerhead confused because they're both just big mobsters who are really tough and strong and big heads. So Tombstone is gonna go just above Hammerhead because I just want to say that. That's what I want. That's where I'm ranking him. Do I need to explain every choice to you? Come on, Dean, you've only got 2 choices left. You're really losing your mind on this one. Manwolf sent me over the edge. Okay, our penultimate villain to talk about is the Trapster. Normally a Fantastic Four villain, but I thought I'd chuck them in here anyway. They have a glue gun, and they glue. It's so dumb. It's just got a glue gun. And he's like, oh, I'm going to stick you to the wall. It's stupid. Shut up, Sony. Do you know why don't I want to see Trapster? Just 32nd place, whatever. Next up, we have Venom, our final villain to talk about. Yeah, I'd like to see Venom. I think this is very likely to happen, and I want to see him meet Spider-Man, because Venom's a boring character if you don't have Spider-Man there, and I'm not a big fan of the Tom Hardy Venom movies, so just give me what I want, and just give me the filthy Tom Hardy, Eddie Brock against, oh, little sweet Tom Holland Spider-Man. That'd be fun to see. I'm going to put him, I just read Manwolf, in 7th place. And that's it done. Here is our final leaderboard. Big Wheel only made it to 18th place, which is a big disappointment. I might need to bump him up a couple of places. And Manwolf is in 8th place. Kingpin is, of course, number 1. Second is the Prowler. Third is Craven. Fourth is Silver Sable. And fifth is Black Cat. And then just go through our bottom 5. We have Screwball, Boomerang, Lizard, Molten Man, and He Who Shall Not Be Named. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for watching this dumb video where I lost my mind. Please like, please comment, please subscribe, and let me know what you want to talk about in the future. Do you want to hear me talk about Spider-Man or Batman or non-superhero stuff? Heaven forbid. Yeah, thank you all for watching. Goodbye.